Hello and good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Leonardo McClarty, and then President of the Howard County Chamber, and I'd like to thank all of you for participating and for your interest in our program this morning and conversation with the Comptroller, Peter Franchot. I think we'll have a great discussion, and for those of you that have participated in discussions and conversations like this, particularly with the Comptroller, I think many of you certainly know and can appreciate his honesty and candor and really just willingness to have dialogue and conversation. I think ultimately you'll end up finding, if it's your first time, that pretty much he comes with very few frills. And it's just, again, a great dialogue and discussion of certainly legislative issues pertaining to the state of Maryland, particularly as it relates to the state's financial conditions, as well as hearing his ideas for business and economic development and so forth. And so he will be joining us momentarily, but prior to him, excuse me, joining us, have a few things I do want to do on my end. And the first is just continue to recognize and acknowledge our 2020 annual partners that you see reflected behind me. And so again, very thankful and appreciative for the support that these businesses have given to the Chamber during the course of this year, as well as also want to thank those that have already agreed to support the Chamber going into the 2021 year. And so for those that are in the mix of decision making and trying to figure out how you want to spend some of your marketing or community dollars, certainly hope you'll consider the Chamber. We have our 2021 sponsorship package available currently. And so if there's interest there, certainly feel free to reach out to me, or you may also contact Morgan Simonet, the Chamber's Director of Membership and External Affairs. Also, we're in preparation for our 2021 membership directory as well. And so while this is always used for business development as well as insights onto the county from a business standpoint, the big thing right now that I want all of you to do, if you haven't done so, is to verify your information. We've had a couple of notices in our newsletters. You've also been contacted directly from Alex Sullivan on our team, encouraging you to verify your information. In addition, this is another great way to support the Chamber, as also the book contains advertising. It's also used by our Economic Development Authority partners as well. And so certainly we have the Biz Monthly will be working with us on it to produce the directory, which will be available to those that are members by the latter part of January. And so, and then final comment, want to thank those of you that also participated in our recent holiday awards program, which was virtual. We had a great evening, and in the event that you missed it, we also have it on the Chamber's YouTube channel, which you can go and check out, and as another way of also supporting your colleagues in business who were recognized for their achievements and accomplishments in terms of supporting businesses here in Howard County. And so with that is enough on my comments right now. And so I'm going to actually turn things over to the Chamber's our current board chair and Chuck Phillips from KCI, who is going to bring forth some comments, and then also formally introduce our comptroller, who I think, I don't know if he's made it in just yet, but we'll still take care of some of those preliminaries so that when Comptroller Franchot joins in on us, all of those preliminary introductions and things like that will be taken care of. And then we'll get started from there. And then in addition, if we need to, I can provide a few other remarks again as our speaker comes in. So with that, Chuck.
Thanks, Leonardo, and thanks everybody for joining us. You know, I always enjoy the opportunity to talk with our comptroller. I just believe he's done an outstanding job over the time that he served Maryland in this role. And one of the things that I most appreciate about the comptroller has been really his independent voice. He hasn't been pulled one way or the other on particular issues. I think he's done an incredible job on the Board of Public Works. And one of the things that are near and dear to my heart, craft beer, he took a really positive stand on. And I greatly appreciated that. He was out there as an advocate for the craft beer makers, that they would have the opportunity to have a broader distribution of what they make. And as you all know, in Howard County, we've got some great local breweries, Jailbreak, Manor Hill, Ellicott Mills Brewery, Sapwood, Black Flag, just to name a few. And, you know, important to them is making some money and having that ability to do some additional distribution. So I greatly appreciated his role. He fought very, very hard on those issues, and hopefully will continue to do so. You know, we have some other issues going on in Howard County right now that, you know, we certainly need assistance from the state on. Relief from small business, for small business, you know, with the COVID-19 impacts. We have an affordable housing issue going on in Howard County right now. And for the first time that I can remember, we have some intervention kind of at the state level to local land development regulations, in that one of our state delegates has actually introduced a bill to eliminate the fee in lieu of provision in our affordable housing clauses as part of the land development regulations. Typically, land development regulations are left to the local jurisdictions, and they're handled by the county council. And in this case, you know, this is the state kind of getting involved, trying to eliminate that fee in lieu of provision that is very, very important for the Howard County Housing Commission. They like having those funds available. They like the ability to use those funds and target specific projects in specific areas. And if these provisions are overturned, I really think it'll have a negative impact on development in the county at a time where we don't need additional negative impact, you know, on development. We have enough issues with affordability, with lack of available inventory right now in housing. You know, the settlements, I've seen the numbers going way up and the inventory going way down. And what that does is forces prices up even higher, which will create the greater disparity and really a need to have, you know, these additional funds available for the Housing Commission. We also can always use help from the state level in funding the Ellicott City flood mitigation projects. You know, there's still more work to do. We haven't had a storm, luckily, in a little bit now that's had a major impact in Ellicott City, but we all know we have more work to do there. And any help that we can get, you know, from the state on that funding is positive. And then lastly, the big elephant in the room, obviously, for us is going to be Kirwan and the funding of education moving forward. So I am not sure. Oh, yes, the comptroller has joined us. So good morning, comptroller. Good to see you.
How are you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Without further ado, I guess I'm going to introduce Peter Francho, our comptroller. He was elected Maryland's 33rd comptroller on November 7, 2006, and sworn into office on January 22nd, 2007. He was reelected on November 2nd, 2010, November 4th, 2014, and November 6th, 2018. Prior to his election to statewide office, Mr. Francho served 20 years in the House of Delegates, representing residents of Montgomery County. Mr. Francho served on the House Appropriations Committee and chaired its Transportation and the Environment Subcommittee. Throughout his career, he's been a strong advocate for education, healthcare, transportation, and environmental protection initiatives. As comptroller, Peter Francho has been an independent voice and fiscal watchdog for the taxpayers of Maryland. He serves on the 3-member Board of Public Works, as I mentioned earlier, which approves millions of dollars in state contracts each year. And Comptroller Francho has worked tirelessly to keep Maryland competitive in this knowledge-based economy, assisting working families and protecting the state's natural resources. Comptroller Francho attended Amherst College, getting his BA back in 1973. Northeastern School of Law, where he received his degree in 78. And from 68 to 70, he served in the United States Army. He's married to Ann Mayer, a lawyer, and they have 2 children, Abigail and Nick. They live in Tacoma Park. And I had the distinct privilege one night of spending several hours with Comptroller's dad at a fundraiser some years ago. And we sat at a table, and it was one of the most engaging conversations I had. He was sharp as could be, astute on the issues, and very, very proud of his son. And without further ado, the Comptroller, Peter Franchot.
Chuck, thank you very much. That was a way too favorable an introduction, and thank you for your comments. I probably don't deserve it, but my dad, who's no longer with us,
Yes.
was a B-24 bomber pilot in World War II. And he then had a long career in the law. And he used to say to me, Peter, whenever I was complaining about how bad things were and how much doom and gloom and, oh, woe is me and woe is this and that, he'd just look at me and he would say, Peter, every problem presents an opportunity for something good to happen. So start thinking about solutions and stop complaining. And that he always said in a very nice way, but I think that's appropriate for the time we're in right now. Obviously, we've got rest of December, January, and February, where we're being correctly warned that there's a tremendous upsurge coming as far as the virus. And I urge everybody to batten down the hatches and don't let your guard down and protect your family at all costs, and particularly your older members of the family. And just don't buy into this politicalization of a virus. This is a nasty, devastating disease. You don't want it, and I don't want it, obviously. But it's running through the country and the state like an out of control forest fire right now. So all I can say is survive until April. April will be the beginning where we get access to vaccines that can protect us ordinary citizens. And I think that medical solution will usher in towards the end of next calendar year, probably the biggest spurt of economic growth the country's ever seen. But I want you guys to all be around, and I want your loved ones to be around. And I canceled Thanksgiving. I'm going to cancel my family's gathering at Christmas. I just don't think it's safe. I'm sorry. And that's not because I'm angry or something. I'm not. I'm just urging everybody to be aware that we're going into a 3-month period that we have never seen before from a public safety standpoint. As far as businesses, I'm advocating that we take $2 billion out of the reserves of the state, spend it immediately on a form of state relief for small businesses and individuals that can't pay their rent, can't buy any food for their kids. Why do I say that? I'm normally very tight with a dollar and conservative on fiscal issues. Well, skeptical as I was of the first stimulus, I have to admit, spending that god-awful amount of money, all of which was printed in somebody's basement in Washington, proved to be unbelievably beneficial to the Maryland state economy. And my economists were absolutely stunned at the stabilizing impact that spending $2.2 trillion at the national level had. We got about $20 billion directly into Maryland from that. And as a result, we had a relatively stable through the summer tax season, to our great surprise, because 1.1 million Marylanders filed for unemployment. First time unemployment. And normally when that happens, the tax revenues take a dive. Well, this time they didn't. And the reason they didn't is because the amount of stimulus and the fact that they did the Paycheck Protection Program. Long-winded way of saying, if we don't get a second federal stimulus, we are up the creek. And trust me, we do not have a paddle. So I've got my fingers and toes crossed that the Congress gets its act together and the president signs some kind of temporary, even if it's short-term relief. However, whether they do or not, I think the state should take $1 billion out of the rainy day fund, should take the $585.6 million that we had as a positive fund balance on June 30th, and we should borrow, because we have enormous, we're a very wealthy state and we have enormous debt capacity that we have restricted in the past. We should borrow $1 billion and substitute that for our PAYGO dollars that we can back out of capital projects. Why do I say that? Because I am tight with a dollar, and I really was skeptical of more debt and more spending, but you just can't deny the fact that we're in a unique situation here. We're asking people to shelter in place and protect themselves from a virus. We're asking businesses to assume all sorts of appropriate restrictions, but we're not giving any relief, particularly to small businesses and folks that unfortunately do not have a job and don't have any income coming in. So we're asking the impossible, which is, shelter in place, restrict your activity. If your business, barely stay open. But, oh, by the way, we ended the first stimulus back in August, and the money's run out and there's nothing there anymore for you. You can't, we're not going to come in with the cavalry and help you. So that, if you guys want to help out, and I'm obviously a huge fan of Howard County and the business community, because you're really the economic breadbasket of the state. I read, in history that Howard County was the literal breadbasket of the revolution. You provided all the provisions for, or the farms in Howard County did, for General Washington. And that allowed us to become a country. Well, now you're the economic breadbasket. And, what you represent is very, very important to me as the comptroller. Each of you, I salute for your entrepreneurship. And let me just single out one individual. He's a gentleman by the name of Dave Costello. And if I'm ever lucky enough to be governor, someone like Dave Costello is going to sit by my side and advise me how we efficiently invest in infrastructure without getting hosed by things like, I forget the name of it, construction managers at risk that are always like tacked on to all the state construction projects. And David taught me, or mentioned to me, but by the way, you can save 15 to 20% if you do a design bid build. Turns out that all of the state construction, about $2 billion, or most of the state construction does do design bid build, but there's a lot that is not. The university system is allergic to the concept. They just want to pay millions and millions of dollars of excess dollars for the other model. So I noticed that David was your Entrepreneur of the Year, and I salute you for that, because we're not talking about measuring our results by how much of your money we're spending. We need to measure our results, our success as elected officials, by what kind of results we're delivering to you, your businesses, your families, the schools, the roads, the healthcare institutions, the efforts to save the environment, the public safety. We need to justify government by the results that we're delivering. And that is my bottom line reform of just about everything I see from a fiscal and economic policy standpoint in Maryland. We've gotten into a lazy habit of just adding spending to everything else. It's like having an overloaded Christmas tree with ornaments and just continuing to put ornaments up there, but without looking at the fundamental economic and fiscal realities that we have. I know this conflicts with what I said earlier about spending $2 billion. I'm just saying that $2 billion is on a one-time only basis. I'm not talking about permanently borrowing more than $1 billion in the state's debt capacity. talking just on this one-time emergency situation where the small businesses are bleeding and closing all around us. And I will conclude with that. We've lost about 30,000 small businesses already in Maryland. Every single one of them was their own little ecosystem of suppliers and vendors and lawyers and supporters and tenants and customers. And it's a tragedy, but we can't go back and put milk back in the bottle. It's spilled. We need to save the next 30,000. And that's why I think we need a state relief plan. Chuck, I'm sorry to go on so long, but we are in dangerous times. That's all I can say. And I believe, my experts say that the second half of next year is going to be a growth year, the likes of which we've never seen. But they are also concerned about who may survive and who may not survive. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Well, thank you, Comptroller Francho. And so good morning. Hello there. Welcome.
Yeah. How are you doing? It's great to see you.
I'm good.
Yeah, thank you
good.
For letting me swing by, and hats off to you and everybody that you represent, because, I've been up to Manor Hill and Hysteria and some of the brewing companies because I regulate alcohol these days. And I love Howard County because it's innovative, entrepreneurial, represents the genius of the private sector.
Well, excellent. Well, I think you and Chuck have been hanging out at the same, watering hole, so to speak, because he was just talking about some of those products and companies as well. And so what we're going to do is obviously take about, 40 minutes or so, and just really have some additional conversation. And so for those that are watching, certainly feel free, if you maybe use the feature to raise your hand, then I'll certainly be on the lookout. Between Taylor and I, one of us will certainly be able to see you on the screen. But maybe to open it up here, one question that I had, as we prepare for the 2021 session, certainly there's a lot of uncertainties that are before us, particularly from a General Assembly standpoint, as it relates to having to make adjustments to how the General Assembly meets and how the public is involved and decisions are made and testimonies and so forth. So just curious as to what are your thoughts as you hear the different announcements coming out, both between how business will be conducted on the Senate side as well as also on the House and the particular committees. Just share your thoughts there just on the upcoming session, I guess maybe procedurally, and how that may impact just the state to be able, or our delegates and senators just to be able to conduct the business of the state. So that will be just kind of maybe my opening question here.
Sure. No, that's a perfectly fair question. And I don't have a good answer for you because I'm not in the legislature anymore. Much as I admire the new leadership, I think the Senate president and the new speaker are kind of a breath of fresh air as far as Annapolis goes. Let me just, I forgot one housekeeping thing. I'd like to give my personal cell phone number out. Why do I do that? Because I want you to be able to text me or voicemail me. If you're in my contacts list, I'll try to answer the phone, actually answer it. But the number is 301 area code, and please put it in your contact list, 301-332-1961. So if now or in through session you have questions about taxes and other proprietary stuff that you need someone to get back to you on, just let me know on my cell phone, and don't send me a long thing where you're complaining about something necessarily, but that's okay. You can do that too, I guess. But try to let me know what you need, and I'll try to be helpful to you. And then I mentioned the handling of the COVID crisis, or I alluded to it. I want to apologize on behalf of the national government and frankly, even the state government, much as I think Governor Hogan and his team have done a rather commendable job. I just want to apologize to you guys in the private sector. This is just a completely mishandled response to a very devastating virus. And in addition to the public safety issues, the economic consequences are just tragic to me because they were largely avoidable. As far as the legislature goes, my biggest recommendation to you when communicating with them is tell them to do no harm. We're in a very, very tricky situation right now as far as not just the public budgets, but as I mentioned, small business budgets. And it's unclear how we're going to do in the calendar year coming up. And for example, with great fanfare, they passed this huge new Kirwan report for education funding. Look, I love the reforms that are mentioned in there, expanding pre-K and even paying teachers more and getting, getting more school construction, et cetera. I just think that the architects of Kirwan did not anticipate the pandemic and the economic consequences. And as a result, the architects well-intentionally did not even bring this up. Now that we've got more or less the situation that we're faced with in calendar year 2021, I hope that they will put Kirwan on hold until we can sort out what it is that we can afford down the road. And so not this session, but the next session, I think they can address some of the things that they may have wanted to address this session. This upcoming session should be all about survival. Survival of people, survival of small businesses, survival of our, normal style of government. I've never seen people as polarized as they are now. This is, I'm speaking personally now, but the fact that we're debating this rabbit hole conspiracy about whether or not the national election was rigged or stolen is just completely and utterly unacceptable. And it's very, very damaging to the country, regardless of if you're liberal, conservative, rural, urban, Republican, Democrat, I don't care, but peaceful transfer of power should not be jeopardized at all. And so I think without getting myself too much in trouble, I will just state that as an American citizen, as a veteran of the Army, I am appalled at the situation right now because, as I said, it's a rabbit hole we're going down. Okay, so I'm sorry I can't be very helpful to you as to how they're meeting and how you communicate with them and how you lobby on specific issues, but I importune you all to just pass the message along to all of them. Do no harm. You can't raise taxes during a pandemic. I know you want to, but don't right now. Take a time out. It's egregiously bad timing. And we have other priorities.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And so I'm going to follow up that question with also, you were mentioning earlier about, taking, I think it was about $2 billion and obviously being able to utilize those funds to support, but particularly small business, as well as certainly various community or I guess issues that for people that have been impacted. What perhaps are some of your ideas just in terms of maybe some specifics, I guess maybe just that you would like to see done or that you may perhaps champion as it relates to utilizing those funds and supporting small businesses and so forth? So that's the first question. And then I do have another question I'll follow up with that's on related to pass-through entities that was provided to me here as well. But the first question is just maybe some of your thoughts and ideas as to how the state can further support the small business community and really, I would say, the employment community as a whole.
Exactly. And the problem in Maryland right now is that all of us elected officials rhetorically think you're the greatest, and particularly small businesses are the backbone of the state's GDP. And we say wonderful things about that, but our actions never match our rhetoric. That's the problem in Maryland. And, I have a very positive relationship with Governor Hogan. I work closely with him on the Board of Public Works. He's a functional, rational adult. I can talk to him even though we're from different parties. He has a different opinion than I do as far as the use of state relief funds. He's put a little bit into the small business relief account. Appreciate that, but it's not nearly enough. And so I have said to him that he should work with the local chambers around the state and come up with a list of 30,000 small businesses that are hanging on by a thread, many of whom have been in business for years and years and years. And get the list of 30,000 businesses to me as comptroller, and I will disperse whatever grant is appropriate that he and the legislative leaders determine. But the key is the speed and the fact that the state, number one, is saying we're with you, but number two, hey, we're going to put some money in your pocket. And we just can't afford to wait. And Congress is Congress. And sometime they're going to have a relief plan, but whether they do or whether they don't, it's essential, in my opinion, that the state do its share. Am I comfortable in advocating that? And does it kind of conflict with my general moderation on fiscal issues? Yes, but I stick to my guns because I think it's a moment of crisis as we speak. The governor rationally says to me, Peter, I want to save that money in case we need it for the state budget next year, which hopefully we won't, but let's just assume he's right. That's a second priority. That's not the top priority. The public budgets in Maryland, county, municipal, and state, have plenty of liquidity and reserves to ride this out. And particularly because we have a medical solution on the horizon. Maryland small businesses don't have that flexibility. They're hanging on by, many of them, by their fingernails. And they need a no question asked grant. You guys know who they are. I mean, this is not rocket science. Somebody could give me a list in Howard County of 400 or 500 businesses that deserve, based on their community presence and the difficulty that they have, for example, in the hospitality sector, of surviving. You could give the governor the names. Would there be maybe some abuse on the edges? Okay, maybe there would be. Maybe some that don't deserve it would get it. But the key thing is speed. And now, and we just if we wait until January, we're going to lose another 30,000. Thank you. Sorry about that. If I'm going on too long, feel free to interrupt me, Leonardo.
No. So this next question comes and it says here, if you could talk about Senate Bill 523 that was passed in July. The bill is to alter tax imposed on certain pass-through entities and allows the entity to pay tax at the entity level. And so I guess if you could share a little bit about that. And if there's something perhaps phrased, I guess, a little awkward here, apologize for that. I'm just reading it as it's presented. But basically, it's related to Senate Bill 523 and the tax alterations on pass-through entities.
Well, Leonardo, that reminds me that I went to law school and that I was an English major in college and that I am not an accountant and I don't particularly follow all of the ins and outs of the legislative bills. So with your support, I would like to have my deputy comptroller, Sharon Bernardi, the first African-American female in history to be the deputy comptroller. And I selected her because she's so knowledgeable about all of these wonderful issues that may come up. But I'm going to pass on that because I really don't have the briefing in front of me. She doesn't need any briefing document. She will be able to answer it immediately as to what the situation is. And Alan Brody, if you're on the line, will you make sure Sharon Bernardi, the deputy comptroller, calls whoever's asking that question and briefs them on what the current situation is?
Okay, we'll do it. And actually, I'm just going to share here, and I'm going to actually just share it. Alan, I'm going to send you a private message here where I was just able to quickly copy something online that speaks about the bill. And just quickly, it just says here, Maryland passed Senate Bill 523 that takes effect July 1st and applies to the tax year 2020. The bill gives pass-through entities the option of paying state income taxes at the entity level instead of at the individual partner level. And it says under the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the maximum state and local tax deduction is limited to $10,000 through tax year 2025. And so that's just a very quick synopsis here. But anyway, Alan, I'm sending you this in just a private message here.
Yep,
No,
I'll be
thank you
calling.
for
I'll
that.
follow up.
And yeah, Alan, thank you. And I will say, just for the benefit of folks on the line, I'm considering giving a tax holiday for the January 15th estimated tax payment, and for January, February, March, and April business sales tax revenues, et cetera, amusement tax, alcohol tax, all of those things. I'm thinking of deferring those until April 15th, the traditional tax day. Why am I doing that? It's a way of injecting at a no interest loan of well over $1 billion into small business pockets. You still have to pay the tax come April 15th, but you have a little more flexibility in your budgets. I did that on the the income side and the business side with the cooperation of the IRS. We went from April 15th to July 15th. That proved to be very successful as my own form of, as the comptroller, relief to small businesses who right now are, cash in the back pocket is what they need.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess another question I have, and again, I just want to encourage those of you that are on here, feel free to, if you have a question, you can either put it in the chat and send it to me directly, or for those of you that, if you just want to, again, use the raise your hand feature, certainly we'll be on the lookout there, but really want to make sure you have this opportunity to ask questions directly should you have them. But another question, I guess, that I have that kind of deals with both business as well as certainly the financial implications on the state. And that is, as you alluded to earlier, and obviously Kerwin generated a lot of, the public discussion and attention. But one of those other bills that we're focusing on here at the Howard County Chamber, as well as many other business groups, deals with the bill around the taxation on online advertising. And so we know that bill was introduced and passed, and then it was one of the bills the governor vetoed. And so now there's this big speculation that bill or the veto may possibly be overturned when session reconvenes. But one of the other big concerns there, and that we're hearing, is related to litigation, and that it will be litigated by many of the, I would just say, online advertising players, which is a huge group. But ultimately, with that, when we, I guess, find ourselves in some of these lengthy litigation battles, if you could maybe just share, how does that ultimately impact the state? And particularly when, in this case, if the bill was passed based upon an assumption of the amount of revenue it would generate, and then if we end up in litigation and that revenue was not brought about, kind of talk a little bit about all of some of these implications that we could be looking at just from a state standpoint.
The impact on the state, I think, is somewhat incidental. I happen to think that we should be putting cash in the pockets of small businesses, Maryland citizens, particularly those that are so challenged right now they can't buy food for their kids. Money should go into their pockets. We should not be putting taxes, we should not be making taxes higher, no matter what the justification is. At this point, everything should be deferred until the next calendar year, in my humble opinion. And the details of the digital tax being litigated will, I guess, if the legislature passes it, overrides the veto, which I hope they won't, that would then create a situation where my office would be defending the bill in court. And I just don't think I just think it's egregiously bad timing, put it that way. And I think the phrase for the Howard Chamber of Commerce should be unanimous to the legislators. No tax increases during a pandemic. Wake up. This is not some kind of hoax out there. There's tremendous damage that's being done to our wonderful state's GDP, and we need to face it. Now, it's not, for the legislature, most of them are not affected negatively. They get their salaries, they get their, they deal with people that are not suffering or don't have real economic challenges. But the idea that we're going to be taking money from taxpayers and businesses in this time when we are facing such a crisis, I just think the easiest argument is, regardless of the details, no matter how good it is, no matter how well-intentioned it is, postpone it. Thank you.
No, thank you. And so this next question is, it says PPP, that's, and again, I think many people know this, but that's the Paycheck Protection Program. But PPP has aided tenants in meeting payroll, but left little for rent. Is there any program to save the small business landlords who still need to make mortgage payments? Can note banks help? Let's see. Can note banks help last spring? Okay, it says here, can note banks helped last spring with deferment of payments for a few months, but that relief is no longer available?
Yeah, no, I think it's a perfectly valid question. I mentioned the positive fund balance. What's that? That's $585 million that, because of the Paycheck Protection Program in the first stimulus, we ended up with tax revenue that we were just not expecting, because when people go on unemployment like they did, generally the tax revenues plummet. This time they more or less stayed stable. That's one-time only money. You could easily take 20 to 30 million and set up some kind of relief fund for small landlords. Most of the large landlords that I talk to, their default rate and their non-payment rate is around 1%. So they're able to, they have the reserves to get through. But I am sensitive to folks that have lower income units, or they're small, and I think that there should be some relief fund that's created. As do I think there should be something done for Meriwether Post and entertainment venues around the state, like the American Film Institute in my hometown of Silver Spring. There should be some, look, the 585 million is just sitting in a checking account, gathering dust. It's not allocated, wasn't expected. It's been there for months. Take it and, spend half of it on small businesses and the other half on setting up funds for worthy sectors of the economy, like small landlords and entertainment performance centers, and allow them to survive. That's all we're talking about here. They don't need a huge amount of money. If Meriwether Post got a relatively small amount of money compared to what we're talking about, that would be a huge help to them, as would some of the other centers in Howard County that have not been able to participate in the relief. In other words, the state of Maryland can target and tailor some of the money that's available to sectors that have been left out. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm certainly glad to hear you speak about that. And obviously, certainly, I think all of us here, have a certain fondness of Meriwether in particular, whether that is on a personal note from having gone to various concerts there, or just because of the leadership that works at Meriwether. But also, I think, too, recognizing that there are a number of different businesses or industries that have been impacted, and where in some cases relief, may have been limited. I know, just as an example, I'll just share here, many of you have heard me mention this with different chambers, or particularly from a tax status standpoint, those that are 501c6s or C4s, I think 13s were deemed ineligible on some of the PPP loans and other relief packages. And so certainly when you have those implications, it's made it difficult at times weathering, certainly the COVID storm that we've all been involved in over the past several months. So again, I guess want to also, as we start coming close on time, want to just again see if there are any questions out there that we have. Otherwise, we'll continue. And so I see Chris Costello just raised his hand. And so, Chris, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Well, thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Controller. The one question that, or one thing maybe if you're talking to the governor, one thing that's going to hit businesses come the spring is their new unemployment insurance contribution rates. All the benefits that have been being paid to the unemployed, which were, of course, necessary, are going to come into cause them to go to these higher tables. So just as they're coming out of this pandemic and they're able to reopen their businesses, they're going to be at the very highest tables. And that means they're going to be paying at a very high rate just as they're trying to get started. We've been in this situation before, you may remember, because you've been around doing this about as long as I have, that we were able to hold the increase in the rate until we were able to ease into the businesses back into health and rebuild the unemployment insurance fund to a healthier level. But if we try and hit them with these higher rates all at once, now this is something the governor pretty much has to do and has the power to do. So
I'm happy to mention it to him. I'm not a very good message taker to the governor because, I have a lot of respect for him and a positive relationship, but I don't agree with him all the time. And so, he's got his own agenda. Obviously, I've got mine. I think the best message that you could possibly take to the legislators is, look, your job is to put money back into the pockets of citizens and small businesses. What you're talking about by not acting on the issue you talked about is taking money out of their pockets.
Exactly.
And we're not even talking about an ideological issue. We're talking about a timing issue. So don't do it. And let's benefit from the rebound, which I hope is coming. My experts tell me that there's just a god awful amount of money backed up in people's checking accounts and savings accounts who have not been negatively impacted by the pandemic because they have nothing to spend their money on. They can't travel, they can't go to restaurants, they can't do their normal things. So as a result, we have all this money built up in half of the population. And if the vaccine gets distributed, that's where they say that money is going to drive a growth rate. And then a year from now, you can talk to the legislature about the wisdom of whether they have to do something with the tax structure in order to, in their mind, fund important priorities. I continue to think that the issue is not money. The issue is oversight and inability to accurately describe what the results should be with these programs that we've been adopting. And I think that the state could benefit greatly from new leadership on fiscal and economic policy. But that'll have to be decided in 2022, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. And Chris, thank you for all your work on dealing with the legislature. And I served there for many, many years. I don't have clean hands as far as fiscal and economic policy, but I've been comptroller 14 years, and I have a different perspective right now about the importance for the state to make sure that our citizens trust their government and that they don't just see the government treating the citizens like an ATM machine.
Okay.
No, thank you.
And I'm a Democrat. I'm a good Democrat, guys. I believe so much in helping people, but the Howard County Chamber of Commerce has got a good, I think, direction and a good mixture of fiscal moderation, but also social compassion. And we need both.
So I'm just curious, having served in the legislature, and obviously you just mentioned how long you've been comptroller. So I guess I'd be curious just to hear your perspective now, that you're on the comptroller, finance end of things, as opposed to when you were just strictly policy making, and perhaps how have your thoughts or maybe philosophies changed now that you've, I guess you could say, switched sides of the desk?
Well, I live and have lived for 40 years in Tacoma Park in Montgomery County. People kid me and call it the People's Republic of Tacoma Park. It was a very liberal legislative district that I represented. And I appreciated it and was honored to have that job. But having a statewide job as the chief fiscal officer of the state gives me a completely different perspective. And as I said, I think the state needs to not only moderate some of its ambitions and make sure that we can afford them, but we also have to think of new, bold approaches. And I'll just give you one quick one and leave you guys with this. If you want to know what is Francho talking about, if he should ever be lucky enough to be your governor, I'm talking about reforming sectors like education. K through 12 education, in my humble opinion, does not adequately prepare our young graduates for the real world. And I think it's partly responsible is the curriculum. Junior Achievement, the fabulous not-for-profit that is corporate funded, which is a big entity, I have a lot of confidence in. They have come up with a proposal to rewrite the K through 12 curriculum using case study methodologies, using existing teachers, using existing budgets. They've tested this concept in 40 different school districts around the country. They're currently testing it in Baltimore City. It is a dramatic, revolutionary, affordable, unbelievably innovative idea about how to improve K through 12 education and at the same time produce graduates who know what the stock market is and know what a budget is and know that loans need to be repaid and know what compound interest is all about. That to me, and who are highly motivated to be entrepreneurial and innovative. So I would encourage, and Leonardo, maybe I could send you a summary of the junior achievement proposal, which I think is called Education 2.0 or something. It's something like that that I think the state needs in order to regain its self-confidence that we can be a leader in the country and a go-to extraordinary state that people say, something is really cool or something's very interesting is going on in Maryland, not just in the education sector, but also in the other sectors. And my goal would be to present those in a way that it's actually achievable. And as I said, within budget. And I think, at the end of the day, Maryland should be a place that's talked about around the rest of the country in very positive terms. And we need, I'll just conclude with this. We need young people in Maryland desperately. We need to keep our young people as their assets. And we need to recruit millennials and others from other states to come to our state. Why do we need that? For our own self-interest, because we're all getting old. The state's getting old. The demographics of our taxpayers are getting old, and people are retiring. When they retire, there's not as much tax revenue. So we need these young people to come in. And the way to do it, I think, is, I've offered to stand on the border with a 6-pack of cold Maryland craft beer to attract these millennials. But I'm interested in making Maryland a go-to state rather than where we are right now. Could I mention one other thing too? These orders that the governor's put into place helping the hospitality sector and the craft brewers and distillers and distilleries and wineries to sell their products directly to customers and citizens. I'm hoping that as you talk to legislators, Leonardo, you ask them to make these emergency orders on Maryland craft alcohol products and the restaurants being able to do home delivery also, that you make those permanent, because those have been a very, very important improvement and modernization of the state's alcohol laws. And, they're going to be in place temporarily as long as the emergency authorizations are there. But I hope that they will be made permanent by the legislature, because nothing but good has been accomplished with them. I mean, everybody has benefited. There hasn't been any underage drinking or public intoxication or automobile deaths that have increased in any significant way. So none of the problems with modernizing the Maryland craft alcohol laws have become real, but the benefits are enormous. And that is something, Chris, that I did take to the governor, and he did promulgate those emergency orders. So I'll think about the other matter, but you get my drift. Thank you. Yeah, it's all good. I can't believe that you guys let me talk and visit and all that. I'm so, each of you in Howard County, when I'm in Howard County, I always meet very important people. So hats off to each of you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for joining us this morning and sharing. I guess since we are nearing the 10 o'clock hour, and certainly want to be respectful of your time as well as those that have joined us this morning, we will prepare to wrap things up. But again, thank you for joining us, and certainly know that the Howard County Chamber's door is always open to you should you like to come and share with us. I think this is easily probably about, since I've been here, maybe our third or fourth time talking, and certainly always appreciate your candor and again, willingness to share. So, and then I guess just as another comment that was shared offline with me, the question was raised whether or not you'll be able to clone yourself should you end up being able to be successful in your run for governor, and thus being able to have another positive relationship between the comptroller's office and the governor's office. And so just a little note that was shared here on this end. But again, thank you for joining us this morning. And
yeah, really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. And my best. Yeah. Tell Mr. Phillips I appreciate the nice words he said about me, and I probably don't deserve them all, but thank you.
Excellent. So as we close, I just have a few quick comments that I want to share that's all related to policy. Some of these were things that Chuck touched on in his opening comments. And the first is just there is an affordable, it's really a housing master plan that has been under development in the county right now. I'm a part of that task force. That document is in draft form. And so if there's a particular interest there, and especially if you're not on the Legislative Affairs Committee, certainly visit the county website and you'll be able to see those documents. Also, the current 20.
Leonardo, I'm going to jump off. Thank you very much. Again.
Thank you.
All the best,
Thank you.
Everybody. Have a good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Also, the 2040, master plan overall for the county is under development. Also, we've had details in the newsletter on that, how you can participate and get involved and stay aware of what's being discussed on that end. Lastly, there's I guess really there are two other things, but there's a COVID task force that I'm a part of, particularly as well as Larry Twill from EDA. It's about 5 different segments that we're looking on. I'm particularly involved on the jobs and I think workforce task force. So I would say specifically, if there are things that maybe you're concerned about that may be impacting you as an industry, certainly, and you want to make sure that the county executive knows about that. One of the reasons for this group is that, as you heard the comptroller talk about, these next 3 months being very critical months as we deal with the coronavirus. One of the things the county executive is wanting to do is to make sure that he has a clear understanding of some of the concerns of ultimately affected parties. And so there's a health group, there's, I think, a child care group, an education group, jobs and economy. And I think there's a fifth group. But again, if you have any comments that you'd like communicated or that I should be aware of as we make recommendations to the county executive, certainly feel free to send those to me. Also, if you were not aware, last night at the county council, new officers were elected. And so just as quick information, the new council chairperson will be Liz Walsh. The vice chair will be Opal Jones. Chairing the zoning board is going to be Christiana Rigby, and the vice chair is going to be Deb Young. And then the board of license commissioner, or the liquor board, is going to be, the chair is going to be David Youngman, and the vice chair is Deb Young. And so those are just some updates from the county council. Also, Cha Wu was named the chair of the Board of Ed as well on the education side. And then lastly, before we close, want to just extend public condolences to the Sarbanes family on the loss of former Congressman Paul Sarbanes yesterday evening. And so again, keep them in your thoughts in the days ahead, and certainly want to acknowledge and thank him for his service to Maryland as well as to this country. And so with that, thank all of you for joining us this morning. Have a great rest of your day and a happy holiday season.
Thanks, Leonardo.
Thank you.